Okay.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:07 p.m. I'd like to announce that this meeting is being recorded. May I have a roll call?
Director Aguilar,
Here.
Topliff,
Here.
Brandt, here, Freeman,
Here.
Craig,
Here.
Deschler,
Here.
Schultz.
Here.
Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders past, present, and future who call this place Anascoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue the tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. At this point, I'd like to move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items or motions from directors?
I'd like to move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a motion by Topliff. Is there a second?
I will second.
All right. Second by Craig. Is there any public comment on this motion? I see none, so I'll go to a vote. All directors who are in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. And this motion passes 7-0-0-0. At this point, we'd like to move to the public comment period. Any member of the public may speak on matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board of directors that are not on the agenda. The board will not take action on any item not on the agenda except as provided by law. Is there any public comment on Zoom?
There's one member of the public that doesn't look like they have their hand raised.
Okay. Well, seeing no public comment, I will move on to our discussion and action items. We have item 4.1, the Isla Vista Compost Collective Annual Report.
I'm gonna pass it over to Carly. I think she did a really good job with this annual report, and we'll share the screen. And she will present for you guys.
I'm going to be presenting this. Alrighty. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having us today and giving us the time to talk a little bit about what we've been up to and what we've got planned for the upcoming year. So first, I would just like to, let's see. Do a little bit of an intro to IVCC if anyone is new here. So the mission of IV Compost Collective is to provide access to composting to Isla Vista residents. It was established by students in 2017, and since then we've diverted over 88,000 pounds of food scraps from landfills, contributing not only to diversion of waste from landfills, obviously, but also the regeneration of local soils through the application of compost. So a little intro to the team. My name's Carly. I'm the program manager and super excited to be here today. I've been on the team for around 2.5 years, and it's been a real pleasure. And super excited to introduce our project manager, who has been just instrumental in a lot of our developments that we've been able to accomplish over this past year, which have just really defined our path as an organization. So Richard, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Richard Palafox, the project manager for the Isla Vista Compost Collective. Yeah, it's been an honor, and the rest of the dirt riders, I mean, all of us are all integral spokes of the wheel that help keep this movement in motion day in and day out weekly. Here we are.
Yep, then we also have Jillian, who we hired a few months ago as our marketing coordinator. She's done a lot of really great work, which I'll get into in just a few seconds. So we'll go over our accomplishments from the past year. Just a brief overview. We made our first sale of compost halfway through the year, which was super exciting and sort of marked our success in adopting composting operations in addition to collection service. And then we also were able to make $618 in sales after that, and that was with very little marketing, just sort of word of mouth test sales and developing like learning how to develop our product along the way. We were able to relaunch our collection service after a year of pause, and we're now serving over 700 residents in Isla Vista across 145 households. And we already have 15 people on the wait list since we were reached capacity in January. We've diverted 13,000 pounds since the restart of collection alone, and 10,000, so that's including this quarter as well, started 2024, but in 2010 we diverted 10,000 total. So that just shows you the instrumental role of collection in our operations, just to divert the massive amounts of volume that we have. We've now started reaching 1,000 pounds a week and growing. We also hired 2 new really important positions, the compost operations project manager and our marketing and sales coordinator. And Richard is going to go into some of the challenges we faced over the year.
Yeah, so just a couple of key challenges that I wanted to highlight. Number one being the nature of the compost piles themselves. Starting with our rollout, getting collections signed up, one of our challenges was not having enough feedstock to maintain a minimum pile requirement. And so after some time, we achieved that to then let us at the next step of developing our recipe. And we had something figured out, and then we came across the challenges of some of our piles not going through the complete process of composting. And we discovered that it was through the variability of the food scraps themselves, depending on season and the signups. Excuse me. So that's something that we've been working on. We need to diversify our recipe so we're not reliant on the majority of our recipe being food scraps. So that was that challenge there. Another challenge that we faced was meeting a projected goal of $10,000 in revenue. And that was just due to not having the marketing in place. People are still getting familiar. We're really pushing an industry that's really in its infancy and trying to educate how to use compost, how to compost at home, which I believe will all factor into revenue sales coupled with the push of education.
So yeah, despite these challenges, we've still been able to make around $630 in sales since our first sale in July. And we have a detailed breakdown with descriptions of each sale and the customer segment for each sale and when it happened, linked to our annual report write-up, if anyone's curious. But we'll go into one of the most important sort of like representations of our transformation from start to where we are now in a little bit. But first, I just wanted to go over some of our metrics and data analysis that we've been doing. This one right here is to address one of our challenges, which was to implement the collection fee, which we learned we have to activate our solid waste power to do as the IVCSD. And so that is our next step there. But we were able to gather data from every household that signed up for collection service right now to ask, how much would you be willing to pay for collections? And we were able to get a lot of great data back. We can see here that more than half of the participants would be willing to pay a fee. 45 of the 145 participants would be willing to pay $10, and that is the price that our internal fee study came up with as a monthly fee. So based on the data and what people are willing to pay, it seems to really match up well with what we have planned for the future. And another thing we were able to do, despite that challenge of not being able to implement the fee this year like planned, we still have been making sure to spread the message and spread awareness that we do plan to implement a fee. At the top of the sign up form, there's an explanation of that plan. And so and then this is one of the questions at the end of the form. So people are well aware, and we see it rolling out smoothly over the next year. Here's some of our collection totals. As you can see, we hit that, sharp decline in winter 2023, right after pausing collections. But we were able to, we're getting right back on track, as you see there on the graph on the right. The graph on the left, you can see just the course of this year, we've been able to get from that super low 800 pounds just using our drop-off system before we were able to restart collection. And in fall, when we restarted collection, we had that steady flow of signups. And now winter 2024, this is just as of last week. So we're about 70% done with the quarter, and we're already beating a record by a lot from last quarter. So we are back on track with our collection totals. And in 2023, we were able to divert the 10,000 pounds of food scraps from the landfill, transforming it into compost, which is equivalent to almost 7,000 pounds of CO2 avoided from being emitted from the landfills, which is equivalent to around 8,000 miles driven by a car, 312 gallons of gasoline, and 41 refrigerators running for a year, according to the EPA WARN model. And Richard's going to talk about some of the testimonials and user reviews we had.
Kind of hard to read.
Oh, I
here.
can, I can take it on. We sent out a survey to our collection participants at the end of last quarter and asked for feedback, asking users, what's your main reason for using the service, which was recycling nutrients from food waste, fueling local agriculture, sustainability, good for the earth. It's a great way to be more environmentally conscious while having a busy schedule, which was something that we knew our service was valuable for. And then as a house, we noticed how much food waste we had, but ended up throwing away. IVCSD makes it so easy to compost, and we're happy we can contribute to slightly less waste in the landfill. I love it when we find out how much we composted, referencing our weekly text system, and then super friendly staff. Our staff have a lot of fun communicating with households each week on their collection day.
Okay, yeah, for the events, we had the pumpkin smash and the food on wheels, which were very successful. But on top of that, recently we've been doing worm bin workshops, which has been really powerful to see people feel empowered composting at home. And there's a huge push on that. We've been collaborating with the Department of Public Worms on that, and that's been really helpful to just be around. And just even these events in general, it seems like all of the student organizations are under the same roof when we're putting on these events. So it's really great to have access to folks that are environmentally conscious. I mean, really our audience. So that's been really resourceful. Our sifting Sundays have been a really great experience, having the community come in, sift the compost by hands, getting their hands dirty, really experiencing how it feels to have biology on your hands. We could invest into getting a screener, but I feel like having this material screened by the community is just, it brings us together. So I really hope that we can continue to have these events and have them be a part of our board, because the outreach has been valuable. Relaunch festival, that was great.
And I'll get into the time breakdowns a little bit here. So you'll see here that I have been able to spend a lot more time on some of the higher level stuff and a lot less time on things like staff management and operations, thanks to Richard, who's been taking on a lot of the site management and operations and communicating with the team and staff scheduling, all that good stuff. Then we have our marketing coordinator working a lot right now on market research that will evolve soon. And then also partnership development, which will then turn to just partnership upkeep. She just secured 2 partnerships with locations where they're gonna be like pickup hubs for our compost, so people can buy our compost online and then pick them up from locations in Goleta and Santa Barbara. So that will be super exciting. So she's done a lot of great work there. And then the dirt riders, I have composting on the left and collection on the right. As you can see here, I have a small error here where the hours on the bottom are switched, but composting is the 32 hours a week, collection is 24. So composting a little bit more, but we're able to, right now we're serving 145 households and we're building 1 pile a week, almost perfectly with that amount. So 24 hours a week collecting and 32 hours composting, but we're composting all food scraps internally at our 2 different sites. We've been doing a lot of staff training and developing our standard operation procedures. We have a pretty extensive document now, which is just really helpful because it gives the staff something to reference, and just it gives us a way to just make sure we're staying consistent with all of our operations. And then Richard can talk a little bit about our soil mix we've been developing.
So one of the things that we noticed is that question is, what do I do with my compost? And we noticed that a lot more people know what to do with the soil mix than compost itself. And so I think it's only natural that we create this value added product, take our compost, involve it into a soil mix that anybody can grab and utilize, whether it be at home, or we notice there's a huge culture for windowsill plants here. So yeah, it's only natural, a soil mix being one, and there's other products that we've been brainstorming, which is one thing at a time. Yeah. And then the operational developments, with the stall system that's already been established there, it's been built. We've been able to retrofit it to fit the needs of a thermophilic composting operation to keep our piles thermophilically aerobic. And so that's been really great. We have staff taking the temperatures every day and really just showing people how to be more intuitive with this living organism, checking moisture and making sure there's enough aeration and having that correlate with our temperature data. And so I believe that's been a huge operation. Not only that is the stream flow from people making collections to then consolidating into buckets to be prepared for the composters. I feel like it's been one of the biggest achievements in our operational developments.
Yes. Thank you, Richard. And yeah, just Richard has been super helpful in just helping us professionalize our operations. For example, just some as simple as having a spreadsheet to record all our temperatures daily for each pile, because this is basically the standard for like just proving that we're following the regulations required to sell our compost. So whereas we used to take the temperatures before, but just didn't have that really easily archivable spreadsheet. And then we also have our diversified technologies that our consultants help us install. So basically like backup systems for the risks that we're talking about here, whether it's weather or staff training, all those sorts of things. And then this is probably the most exciting thing for me that's happened this year. It's just been so great to see like our change just in such a short amount of time, where we went from making our first sale at $30 a cubic yard of compost, where AgriTurf came and picked it up in their pickup truck in our 5-gallon buckets and returned them to us later. Some of them were even like a few of them stuck together like buckets. So yeah, it was just a mess sort of, but just so exciting at the same time, as you can see from the big smiles on the left. And then on the right, after months of figuring out our bagging operations, developing our product label, we were able to then sell the same exact product, same exact amount for $405 to AgriTurf, and that is on their shelves right now, available to the public.
Cool.
And another really exciting thing was we had 200 of these smaller collection pails donated to us that we were able to offer as a new option for our collection service when people sign up, and then also the existing users got the chance to decide whether they wanted the 2-gallon or 5. So that's just really improving our service because a lot of people would ask before, and so people were, I think this was our top liked post on Instagram this year, just our small pail here, because people love how cute it is and people were just very excited for the smaller option, especially for people living in smaller spaces. Also done a lot of, also currently doing a lot of developments in our drop-off system, which is helping user experience and just our site development and product development in the long run, because we're able to avoid contamination a lot easier. We basically separated the drop-off from, it used to be, I will show here, just a part of the compost piles, and now we have it as this separate object on the side so people can use the lid that also helps like flies or pests stay away, and then also we have these rubber bins inside that keep just any, like if people drop off things that are going to attract a lot of flies or a lot of pests, we don't have to worry about making sure staff are monitoring the drop-off site 24/7, because we have all these lids and basically just these ways to avoid those risks. And we've gotten a lot of really good feedback from that, and we're just getting closer to be able to develop some sort of membership system or a drop-off program, which is one of our upcoming goals. We've developed a lot of signage, which has helped a ton, just directing people where to go, and it's reduced the amount of contamination we have in piles that we've already capped off, meaning like we are not adding new material, and they'll be close to done. And if people drop off a ton of new food scraps in there, it kind of just really messes it up. So this has really helped a lot. This is just our mission model right now, who our key partners are, key activities. So it's here for anyone to reference, but just as you can see here, we already mentioned just many of these key partners being AgriTurf, some of our the retail locations that we sell our product at, and then also the environmental and sustainability organizations locally that we partner with to hold events, the food co-op for allowing us to use their space and always helping us market our events, and the IVCSD for being so instrumental in our success. Special thank you to the ad hoc committee for just being so helpful this past year, figure out what our plan was and just define ourselves. So, and then we have our residential collection, our community composting and events, and then we have our online platform for sales and marketing, and then now retail locations going on. But this is here for reference for anybody who wants to see it later. Lastly, we'll go over just a quick timeline for our goals. Our main goals being activating that solid waste power so that we can establish our collection fee, expanding our on market diversification, product development and operational developments in order to build value and resiliency, expand our residential collection service to serve 200 households, and utilizing our full capacity of our 12-stall compost system, whereas right now we're still using the 6 as a buffer. And then finally execute our targeted sales goal of $10,000 in compost product sales. And then I have it broken down here as the steps that we plan to do to make all of those goals happen. So that is it for our presentation today, but I just wanted to, again, thank the ad hoc committee. Thank you all so much for having us and here tonight, and just to talk about all of this. It's been super amazing, and we couldn't have done it without you, couldn't have done it without the patience and support of just through our evolution the past 7 years. It's just really exciting to see the grassroots movement this has become, just seeing all of the developments nationwide pop up just like ours, and us being the first. It's really inspiring. So thank you all so much, and we can answer any questions now.
Great. Thank you very much for that presentation. I'll start with a short question before I hand it over to others. You said that the small pails were donated. Can we give credit, or do we know who donated them, or is it a secret, or?
They were donated by the county,
Oh.
by San Bernardino County, yeah.
That's great.
As well as the sandbags that those are just offered for free. But what we sold our compost to AgriTurf, we're also free from the county. So shout out.
That's great. Well, thank you to them. Yeah, any other directors have questions they want to ask at this time? Director Freeman.
And I'm sorry about the awkwardness of like people over there is like a smudge to me right now. I said earlier, but I went to an ophthalmologist and my eyes are still, I looked over myself like about 5 minutes ago. I was like, my eyes just look like a lizard. I was really interested in the comment about the seasonality of the food scraps and the way in which that affects the chemistry and biology going on inside the composting. And I was interested in like what if there's any specific you have, like what was like what's changing these food that's like, or
Yeah, so one thing that I noticed was during those periods of the failed, we were noticing a lot more citruses. People are getting into juicing oranges. And then also the bread, I noticed an increase of bread in our drop-offs. So I have a feeling it's going to be those two factors. But at the same time, it's like we're in the midst of retrofitting our stalls. So I think, like I said, moisture and oxygen is the biggest factors, but the food stock as well. But yeah, the way we're going to be incorporating horse manure into our recipes now to not be so reliant on the food scraps. But yeah, that was just something interesting that, yeah, it's like, seems like not, most producers are working on a commercial scale. So there really isn't a need to worry about when you're dealing with so much mass, the heat is going to be there. But when we're a micro producer, these factors really determine our end result.
how might the seasonality of food scraps affect our plans using collection from houses throughout the year in order to feed our compost piles? Like, is this something where it's like as we scale up, like if we wanted to, for example, start serving 10 times as many people as we currently are, would we find ourselves just like be able to use all these food scraps effectively, or is it that we're able to use them just that they had some portion there, we're still consuming food scraps, or like?
Yeah, so I think with the framework of utilizing a less portion of the food scraps into our piles, we'll be able to sustain consistency throughout the year.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that like I feel like with seasonality, Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think to me the seasonality poses more risk with like the weather, like the actual weather compared to like the makeup of the food scraps themselves. Like Richard was saying, we had a period of time where there's a lot of bread and citrus. That was also the period when we were still having collection signups flow in. So we didn't have that many houses, like where if we got just a few full of that, it would make a big difference. Whereas now we have 145 houses. We haven't had that problem anymore where we're noticing people have a diverse enough amount of food, and we haven't had to throw anything away in that process throughout. But I feel like the rains, for example, we're working on building lids for our piles right now, and that led to the failure to meet regulations for a couple piles. So I just would say that I don't see like the variability in the food scraps themselves as like posing a risk, just because we're using that variability to we're planning around that with everything that we're sort of developing right now with our recipe and all that kind of stuff, which is why Richard mentioned the horse manure as almost just like something we could put in a very small volume to just ensure it will get hot enough no matter what.
Okay. Thank you so very much.
Director Brand.
Well, I'm glad Jay asked the question about the biology of it, because I was wondering the same thing about the rain and how that affected things. But it sounds like, so you're building lids. Is that something that is already forecasted in the budget, or?
Yeah, it is, and we already have it's basically just we're we're trying different types of lids out. We already have, some of our piles already have lids. We have tarps and they work in the meantime, but we're just like brainstorming ways to use our like current scrap wood and all that kind of stuff. And like some, basically just what could like the future of our lids look like, to where it also, it covers from rain, but also like helps keep the pile insulated. But we don't see that as like making a impact on the budget at all for our equipment budget. That
Good, well, good to know. My other question was, I think it's awesome that we're doing like the daily and like temperatures to keep a log of what it's at. It sounds like that's a part of becoming certified. Can you talk just about what that like certification is?
So we don't actually, it's just sort of if someone were to, or like the county or health services, I imagine, were to like want to investigate, but we don't have to ever provide this information unless asked for it to be able to sell it. Like we're able to sell it as is now. But if do you mean like the organic certification?
Yeah, I'm thinking of like the organic or SB, the SB 1383 certification, like, because isn't that a part of like, you have a high enough quality product?
We're not big enough yet to need to comply with those things. But if we
Not
want-
to have to comply with that side of it, but to produce a product that can go into the mulch that compliant agencies have to purchase.
I don't think I'm familiar with that aspect of 1383, the like the end product details, but for like the organic certification, it is something that is possible for us. And we're still like in the very beginning stages of researching it, but I do know that you don't have to only have organic inputs like of food scraps, only organic food to get the certification. It's like meeting the temperature thresholds, which I am 99% sure are the same ones we already follow for just the general regulation. So we'll continue to look into like ways to get certifications that will help us with marketing.
Gotcha. And with the product that we are basically are starting to produce, it sounds like we're kind of at the tail end of like the first cycle, right? If they're, what is it, 6 to 8 weeks? Do I have that right? And
Yeah.
how long it takes to turn one over? So based on when we first started collecting, we're starting to get there. Do you feel like with how much we're producing, do we have a place for all of it? Like, I know that we've had these great partnerships with the gardens. Now we're starting to sell some of it retail. Do we have projections for, is that going to grow? Like, what's the plan for that? Is it going to all just go to sale product? Is it all going to go to gardens or other partners?
Well, something that I had outlined in one of our market development goals in the written report was passing a resolution down the line to be able to donate a portion of our compost to the gardens, because that would really help with the buffer of like the failed piles we're talking about. It's not that they're like poor quality, it's just that they didn't meet the like legal regulations to sell, but they're still safe and they're still quality and they'd be really useful for the gardens, like that material. So I think it'd be very beneficial to be able to donate that, but right now since we sell it, it has become,
It could be a gift to public funds for donating it, so we want to set up the parameters under which we donate. Understood.
and then another thing is we so we're setting up all these vendors sort of right now, like all these different ways we can channel our sales, but we'll always have the backup of being able to sell it in bulk at those low prices of the $30 yard, for example, and that price can go up depending on how we're marketing and stuff. But basically, we have like the safety net of being able to sell stuff in bulk, which would clean out our supply really fast because people want to buy in bulk a lot more than we could even ever offer. So I think our like bigger, it's down the road at least, is going to be a bigger worry of like, how do we extend the value of our like limited supply of product and then just get it to the hands of as many people as possible, which is why we're really marketing it as as something we are encouraging people to use as an extract, meaning like one bag can be mixed in with water and fertilize a lot larger space than like what the bag looks like. And that is like very true for the product itself, just because our competitors like compost sold on the shelves in stores don't have any guarantee of biology like we do.
Gotcha. And does that mean that we're able to sell that, since it's a more like boutique product, at a higher price?
Yeah, much higher. Just because like the biology is basically what guarantees that it will produce the fertilizer for the plants in the long run. Whereas just because people aren't typically familiar with that concept, they don't like, it's just knowing that, and then you know almost that any other compost you're going to buy isn't going to work. It's just sort of organic material, but isn't a fertilizer necessarily.
Thank you for that.
All right, well, I don't see any further questions from our board.
I think one thing that I thought is really cool that we do now is we have an online store on our website where you can buy it online, pay with credit card, and then pick it up. So that's another, we're using stores, but we also have our own store.
Well, I want to commend you on even getting that whole fiscal apparatus together so that you can actually securely take money and deal with all that, which is not a small thing. So great
it was a accomplishment of Jenna for the move out sale, because she developed like just got us on a credit card system, sales system for that. So that was huge. Shout out to Jenna. And then but thank you so much, because the online store, setting that up with the link and everything like that, is just can get so complex. But
Yeah, I'm very impressed. Good work.
thank you.
All right, I'll move to the public comment period of this item. If there's any members of the public who wish to share comment or have questions. If there's anyone on Zoom. All right, I'll close public comment and I'll return to our board if there's any board comment on this item or further board discussion on this update. Director Freeman.
I'm always very excited to see the progress that is being made in this program. I think it's the process we now have for being able to actually sell it and actually having succeeded in doing sales, and the clear demand for the pickup program, as well as the interest in paying for that. I think I kind of like essentially destroys all the arguments you might be maybe hearing from us. Not many people, of course, a handful of people in the community that are like, oh, where are you spending your money on? No. It's a program that's going to actually scale itself and be able to like actually have like a really large impact on the community. And so I'm always very, very excited about this.
Yes.
Adding on to that, I love the compost collective. My house uses the compost collective. It's awesome. I also love like the text that we get over the things that are being diverted from landfill. I think it's very Isla Vistan in that a lot of people in this community really care and want to see that environmental change happen. And you guys are actively working towards creating that closed loop system within Ivy. And so I commend you for that.
Director Brandt.
Well, I also just want to say great job. This program is, as you mentioned, like the core of what Isla Vista is, and turning our environmental values, our values of trying to stop climate change into action. And I think that that's amazing. And you've really taken it from something that was truly the most grassroots of grassroots, like just a couple of friends wanting to help their friends learn how to compost, into a real government aid program, which is really incredible. And I like that you're looking to the future too, because I think that's kind of what we'll be tasked with over the next year. Upon finding out that for fees, we also have to activate solid waste. And I hope that that's a conversation that we will have over the course of this year, to be able to have that, because I think I'm supportive of the concept, and I'm really heartened by the survey that you guys did, which shows that the vast majority of people are willing to pay a fee to participate. And I think that, as evidenced by the wait list that you are continuing to accumulate, that there will continue to be demand for this that will help sustain, that and have a monthly fee. And, just the back of the envelope math is that could really help bring a lot of revenue into the program to help sustain the expansion so that it's, growing the program in a way that is sustainable itself from a financial perspective, which I think is really cool. So I'm ready to have that conversation about going to LAFCO and activating solid waste. It sounds like that's a prerequisite for us moving forward and really growing this. So I think we should do it.
Jamie and I are working on a staff report for you at the next week.
Awesome.
That is excellent news. Hear that we'll have that coming soon. Some small comments I want to share is I hear from neighbors a lot who are very happy about the text messages. And then I also hear from neighbors the text message updates where they get to see the real math of like what the community impact is, and just clarifying that for all of our users is a great tool. I also hear from neighbors who are curious about other forms of pickup. And so when I hear we have continuing conversations of scale, I look forward to like expanding the ways that we can start collecting different items with this whole solid waste expansion that's coming. So I'm in full favor of, the way that we continue to support this program and grow this program. And as Director Freeman said, this is now becoming its own growing ecosystem that we don't have to be the majority support for. The community is the majority support for this program. And so I'm really proud of it. All right. Seeing no further comment, I'll move on to our second item, the Gaucho Creative Proposal for Marketing and Market Research Services.
Okay, sorry, let me get reoriented here. So on the same topic of supporting the ever-growing sales potential of the Compost Collective, we've been in conversation, Carly and I, with Gaucho Creative, which is a student-run marketing consulting group. And Fiona is here, who's their president, just to be able to answer questions if the board has any. But we are recommending to execute this contract with Gaucho Creative to continue to work with them to expand our ability to do market research, price the product, get it into the shelves it needs to get into, and place it to where it needs to be to get the sales that we want. So it's just going to supercharge what we're already doing. We currently have our marketing coordinator working, it's a part-time position, working 10 hours a week. And she's doing a good job, but if we want to get the big boost that we want to get to right now, we are recommending working with Gaucho Creative to supercharge our efforts and get us to the next level of making sales. So they're going to be doing market research, customer interviews. They're going to create a market report for us based on those, and then work with us on product strategy and positioning. And they'll deliver a final report for us by the end of spring.
All right, thank you for that intro and explanation. Are there any questions from any board members at this time? I don't see any. Okay, Director Brand.
Is a part of this like a pricing study?
Yes.
I don't see any further questions right now, so I'll go to the public, see if there's any public comment or question on this item.
Fiona, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Fiona and I'm the president at Gaucho Creative. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm really excited to be here and for our potential collaboration to work together. Basically, of course, I'm gonna say Gaucho Creative is the best. I love Gaucho Creative. It's my favorite part of being at IVCSD. But I'm really excited about this opportunity because Gaucho Creative has had the unique opportunity to work with a variety of different industries. We've worked for big companies like Adobe, Uber, Zoom, all of those sorts of things. But now that we've kind of made our resources and figured out all of the things that we do and do well, we can start working for companies and groups that we believe in. And the Compost Collective is a group that we really believe in. I've had multiple members come up to me saying, we want to help with sustainability, we want to help make the world a better place. And this is a way that's very tangible, as well as something that means something to our members. So not only do we have the experience to execute this project, we also have the passion, which is really exciting to me, because when you have passion in a project, it's 200 times better than just having some really solid experience. So I think the combination of both makes this a great option for y'all, and I would love to help really take this to the next level. Yeah, but if any of y'all have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything.
All right, thank you. Do any board members have questions for Fiona? Director Freeman.
Because so is Gaucho Creative, is it a student club? Is it like, is it some kind of company? Is it, what is Gaucho Creative as an entity? How is it truly?
So Gaucho Creative is this fun little ground where we're both an organization as well as a student-run club. So we are a certified 501c3. So we are a nonprofit. All of the donations that you make to Gaucho Creative in exchange for any of the work we do is able to be off-written on your taxes. I think that's how you would phrase it. So that's a big pro, but we're also a student-run organization. So we're all UCSD students. We work in a variety of different majors, and we all bring our experience to the table to bring the most trailblazing, cutting-edge marketing, sales, strategy sort of things to our clients. So kind of giving it a really fresh perspective that you can't find with other strategy consulting firms. Yeah, absolutely.
Is there any other public comment this time on this item? Yes.
Hi, thank you. If it's too early to say, that's okay, but I was curious if we're looking at selling compost at local stores like the food co-op or islands, you know, yet? It's too soon. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've had extensive conversations with those stores.
Is there any comment from Zoom?
It's just us right now.
All right, well, thank you for those comments, and I'll come back to the board if there's any further board conversation. Yes, Director Talbot.
I just wanted to say that I was very excited about the concept of Gaucho Creatives, and I think it's just a wonderful idea. And we have certainly been so impressed with our own group and how they've taken the compost collective and moved it ahead so rapidly and with such finesse. And I think that having that partnership will be just really exciting for both.
Agreed, and I feel so lucky that we're able to kind of get into each other's realm of contact and figure out that we're a really happy partnership. So I'm really looking forward.
And one of the things I think about Isla Vista too is that being a transient community, we send our ideas out to the world. And so, you know, having your help to push those really good ideas out to the world, I think is really very valuable for us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those kind words.
Director Freeman.
I don't know if this thought process even is applicable anymore, and I'm curious. Is a question very much for Jonathan about the are we able to / wanting to use the money that we have allocated from the university to try to target this thing? Is this going back to the university? Like, is this something option spends like that?
That's a good question. We have $13,000. So in the next reports, you'll see that we have a $13,000 unspent amount from the university that we need to allocate this year. So if that's the board's preference, I can ask Chuck Haynes to make that, use that revenue for that. So.
And we're always looking for ways to utilize that portion of the funds.
Yeah.
And so if we have an opportunity here.
That's a really good idea, and I wouldn't have thought of that. Thank you. Thank you. I'll ask. I'm gonna go see him soon.
All right, I don't see any further board conversations or board motion on this item. Director Brandt.
I'll move to enter into the agreement or approve the funding for the proposal for marketing and services.
I'll second.
All right, with the motion by Brant and the second by Scholes, is there any public comment on this motion?
Yay, compost.
Thank you for those comments. I see no public comment, or I see no further public comment. So I'll return to the board for a vote. All directors who are in favor of this motion, please say aye. All opposed, please say no. And this motion passes 6-0-1-0. And we will now move on to our third item, our mid-year financial update.
I need to take a quick bathroom break.
Okay. We'll take a quick pause, everyone.
We're gonna come in like thing 1 and thing 2 for like 2 weeks.
Oh, I don't think you need
You should dress up as Olivia.
Oh. Dang.
I'll curl my hair. I'll wear a skirt. Yeah.
So much, everybody. Have a good night.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you.
all.
Can wear a skirt, a fun sweater. Little butterfly clip. I know Michaela's got some.
Oh, yeah. This is
You
the
can
best.
have some
I look
pants.
like this most of the time.
You can have jeans
Pants.
and leather jacket.
And big boots.
Spencer? What it's worth, I've been able to connect to the IVCSD network. I've been using it the whole time.
Okay, I don't know what, it was giving me trouble even just to connect to UCSB wireless.
Like
Wow.
fire. It's like
Um,
10%.
Even if I connected to it, I would still need to put in a login, which I don't
Yeah,
have.
but
it wouldn't even-
you're not connecting. It's-
Yeah, I'm gonna have to, like, I forget what there's some
For like, if you're.
command shell thing that would need to reset the
Something sci-fi.
network, but I'm just gonna do it later.
Or
But it works on my hotspot, so I don't know. I was telling them
That
before
looks
you
like
came in,
banana
that I went to the Apple
Oh,
store
okay.
because I was having a
I
hard
need to
disk
do math
issue.
homework when I go home.
They quoted me like $500 to just
Alright,
install a
that's
new
like-
solid state drive and replace the battery. So I just
Your
bought it on
claws, what
Amazon,
they do.
I know.
bought the little
Really?
screwdriver
Just
just
my-
myself. You ever tried to do that?
Typing like that.
Like take apart and half the device and put it back together? I didn't know that since I cracked the phone screen.
Years
Wait,
ago.
isn't that like?
I'll show
I
you.
think it to me looks like.
Stuff
it
for
was
brain.
like, What are we doing? Successful. Like, what can we do? Great. Like,
I
never
know
know
what to
Can we yell at them? That's very stupid. But like, yell at those buzzers.
I want to play
Bicycles.
basketball.
I wish I liked that. I like, feel like when I see a dessert, to me it looks like a healthy, like,
Oh,
protein.
wow.
Do you play the hard one? It's delicious.
Yeah.
I also am on wide brain
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you use notes?
I love that. I refuse. It doesn't matter if I
It looks
think
like
I see fruit. I need to know what it is.
But what I'm doing, yeah, it's my eyeball, yeah. It's like, but it's also partly because like my laptop, to see it, I have to put it here, now that's where it's not blurry.
Oh, yay.
Suddenly I'm done it. So I have
I was waiting. I got it.
Everyone has to be.
I have to leave you beautiful people.
Are you having an emergency?
Yes.
I'm
I have to
sorry.
go back to campus.
Oh, no.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, we have some people that are very angry with us.
Oh,
Yeah.
in what location? At a meeting?
No, the legislature.
Oh.
The legislature's
I
very.
continue to know Jonathan did not meet that.
Oh.
I'm going. It's all right.
Okay,
Unmuted.
we're unmuted. Okay, thank you everyone for bearing with us with our brief break. I'm gonna reconvene this meeting at 7:04 p.m. I believe we had just passed a vote to approve the item in 4.2. And so now we'll move on to item 4.3, our mid-year financial update.
All right, so we usually do this every year around this time. It's just a spending update, revenue and spending update for the district. It's continuing to be positive, but there are some trends that are concerning that we need to address to stay sustainable. Is the summary of the financial report. Our estimated actuals for revenue are 1.3,059,000, which is about a little less than 1% of what last year's was. So that I think I didn't write this clearly enough, but usually we have a 15% growth of our revenue or 12% growth. So this year it's about almost exactly the same as last year. So it's not, it's not keeping up with inflation. It's staying about the same. On average, the monthly collections are 0.03% higher. So there's really not there's not a change. We've gotten a little used to the past where we have a projection and then we exceed the projection. So that's not happening so far this year. In terms of other revenues, they are happening, but they've been slow to grow. So our rentals, our compost sales, and then our collection fee, like you heard, we're not able to implement yet due to LAFCO, to the LAFCO process we are going to embark on. So they're planned revenues that aren't materializing. They're not a significant part of the budget, so it's not a big impact, but we're at least making the moves to generate those revenues. In terms of expenditures, we've spent 52% of our planned expenditures with 65% of the year elapsed. So that's a good sign. We've underspent, not by a lot, but enough to give a cushion if revenue goes into a negative direction, which doesn't look like it's going to go down. It's just going to stay the same. Going into each program, Compost Collective, we had the restructure. We're spending a little bit below on staffing because we had to up staff over the year to get to the collection, to be able to do the collection. So, we had planned it as if we were going to be at full capacity for the whole year, but that really took, I always have these weird noises here. We always have the, sorry, I lost my train of thought. We planned the year to have the full operations for collection, but as you heard in the presentation, it took a few months to get to that point. For the community spaces, that's been pretty on point for what we planned. The only thing that happened this year that was out of the norm is the acoustics project, which we approved in the previous fiscal year, actually got spent in this one, but that's now done at least. It looks great, as you all saw at last meeting. With Ivy Beautiful, things are pretty on the mark. If anything, there's some unspent budget because of the Earthcomb contract has been inactive, and we're not sure if it will be active again. The rental housing mediation program is far below budget as it usually is, but it's still being utilized. It's just, we were paying you approved the pay increase for the mediator today, so we were paying pretty low for that program, and we weren't really spending the full budget there. One area of concern, and we are in negotiations, so I can't say that there's one positive or negative result yet, is with the safety stations. I think they even let UCPD back last May or April in their report that they were going to need to charge us the cost recovery fee from UCSB, which is about 30%. So because we're an external agency, they're not charging us that for the interpersonal violence investigator. So I'm trying to get to the bottom of why that is. But it would add 30% to the cost of the safety stations. And we're trying to negotiate or figure out a way where we don't have to pay that fee, or we can keep the money internal at UCSB and move it around within UCSB instead of coming to us and then going back out to UCPD. That's at least the idea right now. But if we did end up having to pay this cost recovery charge, the 2 locations would cost more than the 3 that we have budgeted for. And right now, we're also only doing the 2 until we can figure out this cost recovery charge that we may or may not have to pay. We're spending a little more than budgeted on the mobility plan and the parking study, but you guys got those change orders and they were for very specific things. So that won't occur in the future because those projects will be done by this fiscal year. The Spring Festival costs are at or below last year's costs since we've in-housed the planning, so that's a positive. Some administrative costs, like software and required services. It's just, this is a growing pain issue in terms of time cards, retirement fee for the service we have, the audit. They're just a little more than we budgeted. It's not significant. I just wanted to note it. And same with legal. We've had a lot of legal projects this year, more than last year. So it makes sense. We have an employee on maternity leave. That was a brand new thing we had to deal with this year, for example. So it's just what happened this year. We had more things on the plate. The UCSB contribution is expiring this year. We'll talk more about that in the next agenda item on the revenue discussion. But it is something we need to look at. I'm glad Director Freeman had the idea for another use of the remaining money. We had $13,000 unallocated still, so we'll allocate $3,000 now from that. And then just so you know, the vast majority of the UCSB contribution is used for the public safety services, the interpersonal violence investigator and safety station. So we need to keep an eye on that. If, I think we will get it renewed, but if we didn't, where does the funding for those programs come from? So that's just something to keep in mind. We do have still very healthy reserves, over $650,000 in undesignated reserves, and then we have 1.5 million in designated reserves. So we have more than a year of revenue in the bank as a safety net for if anything happens. And then, we had a lot of significant investments in new staffing this year and program expansions and renewals. And I think we should just try to let those play out instead of maybe adding more at this point based on how the revenue is looking. And our costs are not exorbitant, like they're not changing radically, but we should just let us grow into the costs we've added at this point is my thought right now.
All right, thank you for that update. Are there any questions from the board at this time? Director Brand.
Do you have any idea why we're seeing such a big drop in, particularly, it looks like the gas tax?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say. I think one of the reasons is that the prices of gas and electricity went very high in the past, and they seem to have come down. So it's a good thing for our residents that they have to pay less bills for gas, but it does impact our revenues.
Understood.
But also other things like water and trash have gone down or stayed the same and not grown the same way that they have in the past. So something to look at.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I think it just continues to point to, it would be great, I think, in the future. Maybe one of the few budget things that we should allocate money for is to allocate funding for the audit project of the tax revenue, so that we make sure that there's a check and balance in place.
Yeah, I agree. And I'd want to go back all the way to 2018 too, if we did that, just so we can know, if we're owed money from past years, we can get it back.
All right, I don't see any further questions from board members at this time, so I'll go to the public. Is there any public comment on this update? Right, I don't see any public comment on this update, so I'll return to the board. Is there any board conversation, discussion, comments, or further question on this update? Hmm,
I just want to say one more thing. I forgot.
Yes,
is
please.
This was going to be a good topic for our retreat is, how do we deal with our new reality essentially, or how do we, we don't want to solve it today, but it's just good to know today. And then in the retreat, we can maybe have a more full discussion or, thought brainstorming of how we want to address this.
That, you, in here, the item is written as give direction to staff and the finance committee. Are there any specific questions, that we should discuss the board out loud right now?
It's just an option. We'll have our first finance committee meeting pretty soon.
Okay.
And at that meeting, we'll have estimated actuals for each revenue line item or expenditure line item. But if there's anything you want the finance committee to look at, that's follow up to this.
All right. Yeah, I don't have anything personally to add right now. So I say we move on to our next agenda item, item 4.4, our revenue discussion for 24-25.
Yeah, well, this is a new report as part of the budget process. It's also more of informational. I don't have anything, action for you all, but it's just good to do this, I think. So we have 5 regular revenue sources as well as a few other smaller ones. We have the utility user tax, which was approved in June. We worked with 7 agencies to collect it. There's 3 electricity payments that come in, as well as 1 for each of the other utilities. You'll see, here's the trend line here. You'll see that it's grown above inflation every single year until this year. And this year's 0.41%. So it's still and that's an estimated actual growth. So it's not the final number, but there's a chance it's probably going to be a plus or minus 1 or 2% from this. The average change is 12.90%. We never take this growth into account when we make our budgets. It's just something that happens throughout the year. So we usually budget for what the last year's revenue was, but but these are the actual numbers that they ended up being, not what was budgeted. And then you'll see here's the growth of each of the utilities. So you'll see that each utility individually has some pretty robust growth itself, but we're not seeing that growth this year for any of the utilities. The next revenue we have is the UCSB contribution, which was 1.4 million for the first 7 years of the district, 200,000 annually. I thought it was good to break it down by fiscal year. Even it's March to March, so you can imagine that is like March 17 to March 18. So that's each $200,000 chunk. As now we've gotten it all from last March to this March. And then I have a table here of it looks like my formatting came out a little funky with not having dollar signs and commas for some of these, but you'll see of how we spent the money from year to year from UCSB. This year we're spending the most because we had a backlog of money that was unspent, like from the COVID years and from the year the interpersonal violence investigator program was dormant. So we're backfilling some past years of no spending. You'll see the 13,000 remaining. So if anyone has an additional $10,000 of what we can use the UCSB funds for, you get to hear it. Lastly, we have charges for services. That's going to be our collection fees and our community center rentals. We have our sales, and we are a good applicant for grants. Isla Vista meets a lot of grant requirements in the state of California right now. We just don't have a very robust system to go after grants. And they do take a lot of administrative, it takes a very great deal of administrative time and energy to have a grant. So we are a great candidate for grants, but they also can become a big, resource, a time drain for the organization. But those are our revenue sources. I think obviously the most significant one to look at is the utility tax. It's the vast majority of our revenue. And if you really want to go into the weeds, there's a table that has every month and how much each utility generated that month. I've been maintaining this for 6 years, so I didn't have to do a lot of extra work for this today. But you can look at the percent change from the prior year per month per utility if you really want to dig in to the utility tax revenue history. That's it.
All right, thank you for that information. A question I want to ask just to clarify. So we had the breakdown the year by year from the UCSB contribution. So for the 7th line, 23 to 24, we received the 200,000 on March 2023, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Yeah, and we don't receive it. It's not something we receive in our account. We have to make the request for the money, and then they give us a check for those things. So I recently picked up a $300,000 check, for example.
Okay.
Yeah, so and in our audit, you'll see it in the next item, it's captured as deferred inflow of resources because it is resources that we have, but it's not in our account. So it's not actual
Until we ask for it.
until we ask for it. And
They
it's
give it,
mutually
they say,
agreed
"We'll give it
upon
to us."
projects. So we can't ask for just anything. They've said yes to 95% of our requests. There was one that they said no to.
Okay, so what you're explaining is that they hold a pool of money that is dedicated to the CSD. We say we want to spend it in this way, and they say yes or no, and then we receive those funds.
And they
at that
cut us a
point.
check. Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah.
Um,
The one that was denied was back in the first year of the district where we asked money for the community garden, which we still fund that community garden. But I think they said no at the time because UCSB already has its own community garden operation. So it wasn't a priority for them to fund. But everything else has been a yes.
And
including
so
the Spring Festival.
is part of this item's conversation going into, or should we stay away from the topic of like how we talk about the future conversation of our possible agreement with UCSB?
I think you can talk generally about what you want for I mean, it's a revenue discussion, so it is one of our revenues. So you can talk about how we'd like to see this revenue change or stay the same.
Got it. Are there any other board questions at this time?
Oh, I didn't put this in the report. I'm not sure if it's relevant to this, but I did an inflation calculation of what $200,000 in 2015 is worth. Today, it's $260,000.
260?
Yeah, so $60,000. So we've lost $60,000 in inflation.
Director Brand.
And can you remind me, I'm just looking at the request that we made last year for UCSB.
Mm-hmm.
210,000 for the interpersonal violence investigation program, 95,000 for safety stations. Is that based on 3 or 2? Based on
With the old price.
with the old price, and we're still
Working it out.
working that out. Yeah. And where are just negotiations as far as continued funding at right now?
I brought it up with, so Chuck Haynes, who's the Assistant Chancellor for Finance, who I work with on this. We talked in the fall about the fact that we do need to have the renegotiation conversations. And we just asked each other, I asked him, like, what do you want us to provide you to have that discussion? And he asked me, prepare some information of what the funds have been, the history. So this is part of that, of what we spent it on. So I think we're getting ready to have the conversation, and he's ready to have it, and we are as well. So we just need to do it now. And this, we said we were gonna do it in winter quarter at some point.
in this winter quarter.
This winter quarter, yeah, this year.
Well, I think it would be good for at least a board member to be involved, just for the political accountability of the situation. Obviously, it's sensitive, so if I can be a fellow, I'd be happy to.
That'd be great. Yeah, no, I definitely think our board needs to be involved in this. And yeah, I think at this, so we haven't gotten like the official request to meet about it yet. It's more, what do you guys want? How do you want the negotiations to go? What information do we need to have? We're getting prepared.
Director Freeman.
If we go into such a negotiation, it might be good to have at the ready. I know this is the narrative that they like, but in case it comes up, like this really comes up in the conversation, the expected amount of revenue that we would be having from the properties that UCSD owns that are not in our district, because they're like little holes in the district, like some maybe per capita adjusted thing for like, you do understand that we're providing services to these people.
But that's not what the 200,000 is
I
based
guess the
on.
narrative that they like.
No,
Well, but it'd be way less than.
Yeah, it is. It's only 4 properties, so it would never be worth 200,000. I think I wasn't part of the original negotiation in 2015, but the idea was, since the UC Office of the President cut out the rest of the campus from Assembly Bill 3, it's not an exact 1-to-1, but it was based on the entire campus, not just the 4 properties. Yeah. I can try to work that out. It might be hard just to get the information of electricity bills, gas bills, but I can try to work that out.
All right, I don't see further questions at this time from the board, so we'll go to public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? Any public comments? I'll come back to the board for board conversation, comments, discussion.
Just I think it's already been, kind of talked about in the last conversation, but it's definitely sobering for all of us to realize that revenue growth has slowed. We knew it was going to happen one way or another, though, because we knew the GAN limit was going to be something that we are subject to. So I think it's good that it's happening naturally. It makes me feel a little bit better because it's a little bit more, I guess, out of our hands. But we as the budget committee, of course, will take all this into account and try to come up with a sustainable way forward.
I was just wondering if we have to motion to appoint someone to do the negotiations, or is they just chosen informally?
I think it defaults to the board leadership, or we can appoint an ad hoc at the next meeting. Yeah. Is there a preference you guys want to appoint a select group, or leave it up to your president, vice president?
I feel like it's a particular conversation I should recuse myself from, since I work for the university. I don't know exactly. I do have some ideas of what I would like to happen, but I feel like this is a conversation of negotiation that I should probably recuse myself from. Yeah, Dr. Freeman.
Is this I don't really want to answer this question. Is this a discussion that Spencer would feel that you would be allowed to participate in? So I think having somebody who was there during some of the early 83 work in that, and who also has had a good history of being board leadership here, would be really powerful. And so you are, I think, someone uniquely qualified. The combination of those two things.
Happy to assist.
We used to have a university negotiations ad hoc committee in the first year of the district, so we'll just bring that one back. So I'll put down the agenda for you all to just to form and appoint people.
All right. Well, without seeing any further commentary from our board, I'll move on to our next item, 4.5, our 21-22 audit.
Took a while to get done, but we're thankful to our auditors for getting it done now. It's a very long document of 68 pages. And I can say at least that there were no findings at the audit besides the usual one, which is you should audit the utility companies. And we're happy that we have now 6 or 5 years of clean audits.
That's great.
You can peruse it at your own desire to see all the different statements in there. But the ones that, I'm sorry, the way it came in is like every other page is blank. But it is what it is, but you'll see that our net position, one of the most important numbers in here is 1.9 million at the end of June 22. That's very strong.
I was gonna ask, you mentioned there's no interesting news other than the normal one, which is that we should audit our utility tax or utility. Can you explain what that means?
Yes. So what they are recommending, they've been recommending it since 2018, 2019, is that we find somebody who can, and we have the resolution that we passed to put the utility user tax on the ballot, resolution 18, I think that gave, and so that's what went to the voters in June. So it has voter authority behind it. It gives us the power to audit the returns. And so basically, we are able to go to each utility company and say, give us the list of all the houses you charged a gas bill to, and let's make sure that 8% was actually collected on each one, and that's the amount we actually got that month. So the voters gave us that power. It's part of the tax measure. So we would find somebody who would work for us as a consultant contractor who would go to all these utility companies, which is very difficult. I mean, for 2 of them, it's pretty easy. It's Glida Water and Marburg. So we have good relationships with them because they're local agencies. But with, and probably Community Choice Energy will probably be good to work with because they're a public agency and we know people who are on that board. But Southern California Edison and the Southern California Gas Company probably be 2 difficult ones to get. Those are the real ones to get the audit done for. The sewage one is we actually do it ourselves. It's not supposed to be that way, but the Goleta West Sanitary Districts told us they're not going to collect it for us and that they'll let us assess it. So we put a parcel every July. The board votes to put the parcel tax 8% on the property tax rolls. It's really not supposed to be that way, but it works out. We are under collecting on that, so we could do an audit on which property owners aren't paying their property tax that we're owed. It's like a $2,000 to $3,000 per year that we're not getting. So that's one. Marburg, I think, is really straightforward since each property owner is required by county ordinance to have trash service for the most part. Goleta Water has sent us like what the billing looks like and how they do it. So they can generate it any time for us, but they sent us the first few months and they said, if you want to keep getting this, you can, or we can just give it to you whenever you want it. So that should be a straightforward one, but it's really Southern California Edison, which is the black hole, and then the gas company, which was a little easier to deal with, but we would have to go to them and kind of get their cooperation. At least we have the force of law behind us.
Yes. And so part of that challenge would be just their sheer size and
getting them to cooperate. I mean, it took 8 months for them to start assessing tax. It was a huge, back and forth, nonstop. Marlboro collected the tax on day 1 after passage.
Got it. That's helpful to know. There any Board questions, Director Freeman?
The under collection that's occurring on the sewer tax, I might have misunderstood. You kind of made it sound like there were just some people in the community who were looking at their property tax and I don't want to pay this.
And they might not be paying their whole property tax bill. I have no idea. So that's where an audit would go and look at who's paid their property taxes in Isla Vista compared to what we assessed. And
When we apply something to the property tax roll, you might not know. But when we apply something to the property tax roll like that, is that something where it's just part of the property tax, and they pay the property tax, they might underpay the property tax, in which case the county is just, decides an allocation of money, or is it like some kind of like line item where it's like, oh, you get a property tax bill, you decide to send a check for parts of your property?
I think it's a bit of both of what you said. So the way it works is every July, Toledo West Sanitary District and the other assessing agencies that have something on the property tax rolls, we all get the list of parcels that are in our district. I go to Toledo West, I ask them for the list of parcels that they've assessed within Isla Vista because, we are only charging 8% on them. So we don't do any additionals if some don't have sewage services. So I get their list of parcels. I reduce it down to the Isla Vista ones. And it's very easy because there's a code for IV. And then I take, each parcel has a number assigned to it for how much they're paying for sewage. So I multiply that by 8%. And then that's what each parcel is getting assessed from IVCSD. I submit that information to the county assessor's office, and they put together the property tax bill, but it is by line. So there'll be a line that says Toledo West Sanitary District, and there's a line under it that says IVCSD utility tax for sewage. But they do get a bill for the whole thing as one chunk.
Yeah,
But
I
it is
did understand that
itemized.
they get like a line item bill,
Yeah.
and they get like, but I was kind of under the impression, maybe I still am, maybe this is all you're telling me, is that they would pay that with a single check back. Not like a check with memo field, like I would like to pay my Toledo West fee, but not the IVCSD.
Yeah, who knows if
If-
someone's doing that.
If it's not possible to do that, then I actually am very curious who's not doing that.
Yeah, it's possible, but they get to pay twice a year.
There's some people who
They'd
aren't able
also
to pay their
still
property
go
taxes and the
delinquent.
county's dealing with, I don't want it.
Yeah.
But if it's people who are actively choosing.
So,
But they'd still go delinquent, and the county would still do their full collection.
yeah, I mean, so there's
The
something
county's
that
got
we
a lot of
get.
Power there.
And the way the sewage tax comes in is you get the October and then you get it in April. And then you get in like July, something called a teeter, which is like the correction. So if someone is delinquent and they are going back and getting the money, but it is pretty like consistent. Like we get 99,000, but we're assessing 102. And so that just means something's happening because those people are getting assessed by Toledo Water, times, whatever the inverse of 8% is, and we are assessing 8%, and that's not a number I'm making up. It's really just the sewage charges times 8%, but we're not getting the full amount.
Some people are going delinquent on their property.
Yeah,
taxes.
there could just be that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, that would seem common.
yeah. It's a few $1,000s only, but it is still, it adds up over 7 years. That's $14,000.
All right, are there any other board questions at this time? Director Brand.
How many years is it? You said we have a clean audit? 6?
Let's see, 2017, 18 doesn't really count, but 2018, 19, 19, 20, 21, 22, 22, 23 still happens. So we have 4 and this will be up.
That's great. Well, it's quite an accomplishment and it is definitely indicative of your leadership, steering the ship and making sure that we're doing everything by the book. And I think that's cool. I think it, proves all the haters wrong who said that Isla Vistans were too young and dumb to be able to manage a local government. This is, one of the best pieces of ammo we have to combat that. Thank you.
Not young and dumb.
All right, is there any public comment on this update? I just see no public comment. Is there any further board commentary on this update? Right, I'll just echo what Director Brandt said, which is that I'm really proud that we have such a squeaky clean history on paper. We'll now Move on to the next item, resolution 24-4, public art policy amendments.
Okay, so back in August, the board asked to make some edits to the public art policy. Excuse me, to make it so that we aren't using the public art fund to fund commercial business activity and signage. Jamie got it done for us, so she got some definitions in here that define commercial activity and signs, and then got into the policy that the district will not use the public art fund for those things. The policy committee looked at this and it seemed to go over well there. And so we're just recommending this to your approval. So now, that we kind of took a pause on the public art fund activity so that we can get this straightened out. Now that it is, we can go back to full force on putting the word out for people to use our public art.
All right, is there any board question at this time? All right, I'll move to the public. Is there any public commentary or questions on this item? See none, so I'll return to the board. Is there any board commentary or discussion on this item?
I thought the changes made did a good job of capturing the conversation that we had and what our concerns were. So I it was well done.
Director Brand.
Appreciate the work that's gone into this. I'm going to be voting no because I continue to really struggle with the idea that we would be limiting who can access this funding at a time when we have only had a handful of applicants, and this policy would nix their ability to have applied in the first place. I think that there is a public good in facade improvement, and this policy prohibits that. And while I don't, my vision for this program isn't that it only does signage and facade improvement. I do believe that is a component that shouldn't be precluded, and I am saddened that trying to tweak the policy just put the program on pause for 6 months, when I think what we should be doing is try to spend the money that we've allocated, try to get it allocated to real art projects on the ground, rather than putting up more barriers. Based on our last conversation, I think I'm probably in the minority on this, and I don't often do a protest vote, but I will be voting no on this.
Director Freeman.
So actually, during our policy committee meeting, that the phrasing on not supporting building facade improvements did get flagged. Like I even was like, wait a second, but like what is the difference between a building facade improvement and a mural? And so I am curious, did we get a good description from Jamie and what she was thinking with the formal definition of building facade improvement?
Yeah, I'll turn it over to her, but it's Jamie, if you want to go ahead and explain the difference.
Yes, thank you. So Jonathan and I had that discussion, and building facade improvements, as I imagine it, and the board can tell me to go in a different direction or take it out completely, is really more about the actual improvements to the building. For example, like stucco repairs or window treatments or things like that would be kind of outside the scope of funding public art. Because what we don't want to happen is have the district fund private building improvements. And so that's kind of what the policy was intended to capture, with the prohibition on spending public funds on private building improvements. It wasn't necessarily to preclude a improvement in the form of public art, obviously.
So like if the wall needs to be sanded down, or if there's a bunch of holes in the wall, it wouldn't be used, this fund wouldn't be used to fix the holes and then put the art on. Like they can fix the holes and we put the art on the clean wall.
Okay. because like, I think the thing that we were trying to accomplish with this was to try to delineate the difference between something that felt more like an advertisement and something that was more about art. And I appreciate that that is a very blurry and very complicated boundary, but I think that it isn't quite as bad as, and I was concerned about it. I was concerned about it when I saw the wording. I mean, I kind of like was going on the same path as Spencer describing it, but I don't think it's quite as brutal as being described here with respect to the inability of even the people who had already applied to apply for this. And so I don't think that we've also retroactively made out of applying anything that we, the one thing we've previously done with this. And so I think this is actually a really powerful that's delineation is not the word I want. Clarification of where of the intent that at least a number of the board members here seem to be having. But I don't know. I don't know if you're a little more comfortable with that, Spencer, with respect to what is apparently meant by building facade improvement. And if it's something where there's a concern that maybe that's that was our interpretation of it, that somebody will look at that and misinterpret it to mean something involving movement of art or something like that, I would totally support trying to clarify further what we mean by that, because I definitely don't want a policy where people think that, well, you know, this mural is a facade improvement. It's like I want murals.
Right, yeah, and that's
Great.
something that you guys can give us direction on to work on a definition that kind of captures more building improvement that would be outside the scope of public art or a mural or something of that nature. It wouldn't literally be funding private building improvements. So, you know, like Jonathan said, patching holes or sanding something down or doing stucco or window treatment, window cleaning, things of that nature, that really is the responsibility of a private property owner, not the responsibility of the district.
Director Brain.
I mean, the policy also defines commercial activity and prohibits the use of the funding for it, which by definition would have precluded the mural that we did at Ivy Food Co-op. It goes even further than what I thought the compromise that we had come up with was. So, yeah, while I can appreciate that you see a distinction on the definition of facade improvements, commercial activity is specifically defined and prohibited. So, I think that this goes way further than what we already voted on.
Not that I'm disagreeing with you, but can you just point to me where I'm looking at the wrong document? That's what I'm not.
So it's in, let's see what page.
Definitions 2B.
Yeah, there's 2B, and then as well, a little bit further below there's a 3 in Roman numerals policy, and there's a final sentence that also like delineates, in no event shall public art fund or the public art program be utilized to fund any building facade improvements, commercial activity or sign.
Okay. I think that we actually have a mistake in the document text. So in public art definitions, it does not simply say commercial activity or sign. It says advertisement for commercial activity or sign. And I think that we're missing the words advertisement for a in the policy section sub 3, because and I think that might solve this complaint, which I will agree with.
Sorry, where is your edit gonna be?
So in the final paragraph, in the final sentence, what Marcos just quoted, it says that the public art program, in no event shall the public art fund or the public art program be utilized to fund any building facade improvements, commercial activity or sign. However, in definitions I, it says that public art shall not mean an advertisement for a commercial activity or sign. And I think that that's a very, very big distinction between whether something's an advertisement for a commercial activity or whether something is a commercial activity. And I think that if we add the wording advertisement for a to the final sentence, that would fix the complaint, which I will agree with. Like, I think that Spencer's making a very good point here about the limitations on this thing. I don't know if this is successfully solving all of your problems, but I think that we're like moving towards a better understand. Like I'm certainly not saying you're wrong here. I'm totally agreeing with everything you're saying about these issues.
So just make it consistent with I. 2I. So advertisement for a commercial activity.
Yeah,
but sign is separate.
yes.
Yes, okay. I got it.
And that might not be sufficient for Spencer, but I think we're at least getting closer.
I'm just looking to see if there's gonna be language that articulates that.
I don't know, I'm not no hurry on my count. I would love to have you like fully analyze this.
I want to share also that when the policy committee was discussing this particular page of our public art policy, I was sharing as a part of that committee that I think that there is a future in which we can like have this, I don't know, have the like boundaries of what we call public art and what we call sign a little bit more clearly. But maybe maybe that, I don't know. But I feel like there was some conversation where we were curious about like making this a little bit more expansive, but not under this umbrella of public art program or public art policy. Yeah. Director Scholes.
I have two questions. How many requests have been sitting in the time that we've been changing and deliberating on this?
Oh, yeah, we have no request sitting, but I will say that Jenna's been actively going to different groups and identifying good walls for murals. So she's been working on, collecting information and generating interest, but we don't have any applications.
Okay, follow-up question. Could this theoretically not be voted on today and sent back to the policy committee with our recommendation?
The board can always do that, yeah.
Director Brand.
Well, I think just generally, I appreciate the attempt to try to amend it. I still don't think that it's really a worthwhile endeavor that I don't want to direct back to the policy committee, because I'm still struggling to see, what the problem that we're trying to solve with this is. And even just from looking in more detail in a couple seconds right now, I'm seeing that sign is defined as something that promotes the interest of a political ideology or religion. And I just think that that's getting into really tricky territory too. There's a beautiful mural in the park of Black Lives Matter and George Floyd. And I think that is really in keeping with the values of our community, the diversity that exists here. And I don't think that under this policy that would be able to be funded. So I just think that, with where we started out with the policy and looking at the red lines, I don't really think any of the additions are worthwhile to me. And I just find it really hard to support it.
Director Freeman.
A couple things. First of all, I also honestly, when I had seen those sections, and I should have brought this up in the policy committee, I did not. The previous things, some of it we actually talked about in policy committee, and we're trying to look at a bit, and there was one typo. This one, I will say that when I saw that one in policy committee, I started to wonder if this is actually if there was some legal reason why we were doing that one, and I just kind of assumed there was, and maybe I shouldn't have made that assumption. And so I am curious what the thought process had been behind adding political ideology or religion to the description of sign, and I'm not certain if that was our staff or legal or whether for all I know, I totally forgot and I made some hashed arguments for adding. I think it did. But where did that one come from?
Turn it over to Jamie to answer, because
Yeah.
our direction to her was just the prohibit signs. Okay. That's what the board had said in August. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is a definition that is commonly used when dealing with signs in, you know, like the political context, such as um, like political signs that you would put in your front yard, for example. And so it can range from, you know, a paper sign to something posted on a bulletin board to something that's posted on the side of the building. So the definition of sign is very broad. I think the intent in drafting these definitions regarding commercial activities, signs, it was based on my recollection of the direction from the board to prohibit, you know, advertisements of commercial or you know, business activity mostly. But I think the main point of the public art policy is to ensure that you are not funding private interests and really focusing on the benefit to the general public. And so I think that's an important distinction, is that you need to make sure that with whatever definitions or whatever art ultimately ends up being approved, it is found by the board that it is for the purpose of the general public.
If we were to remove the wording that said political ideology and religion as something that we won't fund for art, would that interplay in any way with some other law relating to content neutrality, wherein if somebody were to come to us with a political ideology that was maybe aberrant to people on the board, that we would be required to evaluate it, for example, on its artistic merits, and then decide that, okay, yes, this maybe Nazi thing would have to go up. Like, would we be able to, if we struck these couple bits of wording, still make that kind of content determination?
Well, yeah, because the definition, if you struck it, you still might be able to approve or disapprove it based on the findings. So if the board is able to make and Jonathan, I don't know if you could scroll down, because the purpose of the public art and the findings are to promote Isla Vista, more specifically than just any kind of political ideology or religious, you know, ideation or anything like that. But we do run into some issues if a applicant was, for example, to submit a request for a religious mural for whatever reason that may be, because of the First Amendment, the district wouldn't be able to fund, you know, promotion of a religious activity because of the separation of church and state. So
that would be just a situation where we would be prevented from doing something. We prevented with or without the wording, not something where we'd end up accidentally getting forced into doing something because of a lack of policy.
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right, then I'm going to suggest we further strike the words political ideology or religion. I will say that the kind of response somewhat a little bit to Spencer, but actually more to some of the stuff Mark was talking about the some of the goals of removing the signs, and particularly things related to goods, services, and advertisements, is that we also, even in our public spaces policies, have for like the putting little flyers and things, is that we're not letting people use our public spaces stuff to put flyers up for like, oh, I've got like guitar lessons, and like I'm going to be selling those guitar lessons, and like all sorts of little commercial things. And so like, I feel like if we're not even willing to let people put a flyer up, even if they pay us $5 to put a flyer up for their commercial thing, it feels weird for us to fund a giant mural related to it. But so I think there's some consistency we have with respect to the various inclinations, morals, and policies that we've been kind of putting into play here. I think that maybe discussion needs to be had more about that. In previous discussions, it seemed like there was at least some rough consensus on these things, and certainly there seems to have been some rough consensus on these like flyers and things like that we might be hosting. But I definitely don't want to limit the kinds of artistic expression that we're doing here, and so will once again agree with a complaint that Spencer has brought up related to this policy, and I would like to strike the words political ideology or religion from this.
Yes, Director Topliff.
And I just like to give a different perspective, which I would say this is not a big part of our business to fund public art. It's a very small niche. It's a small budget. We may want to see public art everywhere in the community, but it's going to flower maybe with a little bit of impetus and modeling from us, but it's not going to be our job to do it. And so I think that it makes good sense for us to give ourselves a limited scope of what we do and very clearly spell it out so that we don't get all of these controversial requests that we then have to spend a lot of time really processing and figuring out whether it's acceptable or not. We don't have to get in the situation of, you know, raising a lot of controversy in the community about this. I just think given our role and what's important for us to do, that there's plenty of public art that we can fund with the amount of budget that we're committing to it that can be very neutral in terms of all these issues that otherwise might be raised.
Are you then suggesting that we keep the wording on political ideology and religion?
I am comfortable with that, yes.
Okay.
Is there any further board commentary on this? So when Director Freeman asked to strike those words, is that
not a motion?
Not a motion, okay.
And I would vote for it with those words, because it doesn't, I think, make the policy untenable having it. I think we can always move it later. It's clear, I'm willing to remove it, but it's like, it's just an extra restriction.
When you mentioned those words, are you talking about political ideology and religion?
Yeah, those specific ones. I'm still leaning towards removing it, but if other people would want to actively want to keep it, which maybe it seemed, I couldn't quite tell at the end of that last explanation. Spencer's more likely to vote for it if we remove it, then I definitely would go for remove it.
You know, I'm doing the cost benefit analysis, and if it means that we can get this thing over with and not send it back, I feel I'm making an argument to myself in my head that is worth, you know, compromising on my principal disagreement in some of the other parts, because I don't think it's worthwhile for us to spend another round going back to committee and back here. So I think I would be willing to entertain supporting this if the clarification on commercial activity for a sign. I mean, I'd rather just have the whole commercial activity idea even taken out, just because I think it confuses things. You know, I mean, most of the public spaces that we would put a mural on are owned by a property owner that engages in commercial activity. And I think that it just makes it really weird if someone reads our policy and, you know, it's it's confusing to me as a lay person to read it, I guess. So I'd almost kind of just rather the whole commercial activity definition and then that phrase be taken out, so that it just says any building, facade improvements, or sign.
Would you vote for it though if we simply added the advertising for a and removed political ideology or religion?
You mean commercial activity for a?
No, the wording that was to be added is advertisement for a commercial activity. So that it's not that you can't have a commercial activity, it's that you cannot have an advertisement for such commercial activity.
Yeah, if we use that wording and we eliminated political ideology or religion, I would vote for it just so that we can stop having the conversation.
Okay, I will make a motion to approve, or no, not approve, it's not the right word. What's the verb?
You can approve the resolution as amended.
Okay, approve the resolution with those two amendments.
Can I make one suggestion? Sorry, I was the motion to remove political ideology or religion. I just want to make sure I'm clear on that point. Okay, so regarding political ideology, that can be changed to political campaign. So it takes out the ideology aspect and it's just the funding of a campaign. So like someone running for office, which is something that the board wouldn't be able to fund anyway. Same thing with religion, just a suggestion.
We can't
Otherwise
fund
it can just
anyway.
be
If we can't fund it anyway, why does it matter?
exactly.
Tells the public.
You want your policy. to
All right,
be-
great. Then, but
I feel like political campaign, though, people could still argue with it. Just putting on my contrarian hat, political candidate or political committee seems a little bit more clear to me. I'm thinking about the Black Lives Matter George Floyd mural as like my test case of like how would I try to say that went against the policy.
You did campaign within you, would it then not make sense to just define campaign as another part of the definition?
It could start going down the rabbit hole.
Sorry.
Just this, I mean, we can take it out because it's not something that the district, like I said, it's not something that the district can fund anyway. So I don't see I think in Director Brand's context, the Black Lives Matter would be more of an ideology than a campaign. I think of a campaign as an election. But semantics.
I do too. I'm just trying to put on my contrarian hat that of our constituents might wear.
What the community flyer policy says is literature, it's prohibited to have literature promoting or soliciting funding for political campaigns for public office or political organizations. That's what you approved a month ago.
Yeah, I think that definition makes sense.
okay, we could just import that wording and then make the two policies consistent. One to use the wording from the flyer policy.
But you're keeping religion?
I think we're now keeping religion because we can't do the religion one ones anyway, and people were interested in having the policy match the reality.
The flyer. Can you make this up?
Yeah, I understand keeping religion. I don't have a problem.
Okay.
Okay, let me get the motion.
Of course.
So you want to add?
I got
Okay.
Advertisement 4A.
Give me a second, guys. Okay. I think I got the motion. I'll put the motion on the screen so you guys can agree with that. I know that every other government agency does that, so maybe we should start doing that too. We don't always have such complicated motions, but motion to approve 24-4 public art policy amendments with two amendments. So amendments on the amendments of removing political ideology in section 2 and replacing it with promoting or soliciting funding for political campaigns for public office or political organizations, and adding advertisement for a commercial activity in 3 policy. That's 3 policy. It would go right here, advertisement for a, and then this is political ideology.
Can I see the motion again?
Yeah.
So it would say, any building facade improvements, comma, advertisement for a commercial activity or sign.
Yes. That's how we have the motion right now. That's what you had said, right? So I would interpret that in implementing it as like advertise, like saying there's a mural that says, come buy our pizzas.
Yeah, I'm not 100% happy with it, but I'm willing to support it because I don't think that I'm gonna convince people of my way of thinking on this.
Director Freeman, are you with this motion?
As yes.
Is there a second for this motion?
I'll second it.
All right, we have the second by Topliff. I'll ask the public, is there any public comment on this motion? I see no public comment on this motion, so I will ask for a vote. All directors who are in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. And this motion passes 6-0-0-1.
Right.
All right. Thank you, directors, and thank you, staff and legal, for helping us through that complicated conversation. Yes.
I would like to really thank Spencer for being willing to put forward specific complaints about things, like whether or not in the end you feel you got your way. I feel like this is vastly improved the policy, and this discussion I think was very valuable.
Thanks. I was happy to hear that the mistakes were mistakes.
All right. We'll now move on to our next item, Resolution 24-5, Community Spaces Policy Additions.
So this is really like 5 policies in one, but excuse me, just to preface this, we back in October of 2021, we put in place interim policies for operating the community facilities because we were just, we had already had the community room, we had a small policy for that. We were taking on the community center in January, and we just put in place basic stuff to get us through running the community center. 2 years later, we've now seen all the issues that go into running a community facility. And so we have these several policies. These are the first of a few more that might come. We're still working on others, but we just said, let's get these approved now. So I'll go over the general purpose of each one. And I think Maya did a good job. Maya did a lot of this work putting together policies with Jamie's advisement. But each one has like an objective statement that I think really well summarizes what it's trying to do. The first one is and they're in no particular order, but the first one I think is very timely for what's happening in Isla Vista right now, which is currently our policies don't allow a organization to charge for an event that they're hosting at the community center. This would create parameters when it would be allowed and for what the charge is for, and we would work with them to make sure that the charge is covering production costs, fundraising for a nonprofit organization. Now with the new ordinances, the festival ordinance and social host ordinance, let's say a band used to have a show at a private house in Isla Vista, they charge $10 to get in. That's not allowed anymore. They can do that at the community center. And so this policy it wasn't the reason we started working on this policy, but it is well timed. So it would allow us to do this, but we still don't want people to, the policy also doesn't want people to be making profits while renting our space, especially if they're renting it for free. And so we would have a process to keep an eye on that and have penalties if someone ended up using, charging more than they told us they were going to charge. If they gave us their budget for their event, their budget's $10,000 and they expected 1,000 people there. This is all made up math. they're gonna charge $10 to recoup their costs for having the event. If we find out they're charging 20, then we'd go through the offense protocol. That's all. Oh, yes, I'll
Can I
just
just
go
add-
one by one.
Can I just ask a quick question? So,
Yeah.
the example that you give of a band wanting to charge an admission fee, that would be covered under performance fees and could be authorized.
Yes.
Okay.
So like, the lights they rent and then paying the band members if they're gonna do that, and security costs.
Gotcha.
But there's no profit, so we wouldn't allow profit to be made. But if they're fundraising for a nonprofit organization, they could do that too. They could do both, $10 for the production, $10 to raise money for a good cause. Next up is, this is one we're gonna use lightly if ever, but it is giving us the option to do, which is for us to charge for specialized events that we have at the community center. So the purpose here is if we want to offer something that's a very specialized service that isn't widely available in Santa Barbara, Southern Santa Barbara County, or we would be, one of the few places where you can get it. So if it's a class at Santa Barbara City College or at UCSB, for example, we wouldn't be charging for it. It would fall outside of this policy. Let's say, for example, you wanted to have comedy classes. That's hard to get. You can't really go get comedy classes somewhere in Santa Barbara. So this would give us the opportunity to charge for those specialized classes and workshops that we host. Because to have those specialized offerings, the instructor fees that we would pay for right now are very high. It makes them very expensive to have too many of them. So this creates a cost sharing model where we don't have to also charge the full cost of the class to the person using it, but we could make them more possible. And we would have a differential pricing for people who who are low income, and we have we would implement that by having, if they have food stamps or other government programs, we could just qualify them through that. So that's us being able to charge for an event. Any questions on this one? Next one's really simple. It's just a rule to say that people who use the space need to fill out their checkout form. It's mainly, we try to say that this is mainly a benefit to the user, because if they do their checkout form and everything looks good, including taking pictures of the space as they left it, someone comes in after, trashes the place, we at least know who to blame, and we can't say, oh, it was you who did this, but no, I filled out my checkout form and everything was right with the place when I left. And it gets us good data for our process, and make sure that people do follow the rules of putting away. It creates a lot of extra work, and we've had complaints between different users that the room was in a mess when they found it. The next one is going to be hard to implement, but it has been a consistent issue that we do need to have some sort of at least flag for people saying, hey, this is not something we'd like to see happen, which is a no-show requirement. So if someone has rented the space, they've essentially taken up a resource, which is limited space and time that we have. And so we've had it happen more often than we'd like, where people just reserve it and then don't show up at all. And so this would create a requirement that if they are going to no-show, they give us some notice, and we will have a way to check if a no-show happens, and if they do not show up and we aren't notified, they would go through the different levels of offense. So it's an escalating issue, and we try to do some education before we have an actual penalty happen. And yeah, we did work through all the different variations of what no-show means in policy committee. Like, what if you hosted an event and then no one came, but you came? That's fair. That's fine. You're sad, but you at least tried. Versus the room was just empty and dark for 3 hours when it could have been lively. Oh yeah.
Can I just ask a question on that? How often does this happen? No shows.
I mean, a few times a month. So, and it's like during prime times, which is like the evenings. when this happens. So.
Is there anything among the offending reservations, is there anything in common, or is it like classes that are being held, or like meetings, or?
It's usually meetings. We're still like more insular groups who are renting the room and not showing up. But classes are usually us doing them. No one else usually rents the room for classes.
Okay, thank you.
And are typically renting them for free?
Yeah, all the reservations for nonprofit organizations, UCSB affiliated, or any education institution or Ivy residents is free right now. So they are getting it for free.
So, I mean, we could ask for like a credit card deposit to hold the room that we released when they showed up.
That's yeah, there is another avenue we can go down. I think we're still working out this whole side of paying for the reservation and if we want to do that or not. And it's a future discussion at policy committee. We just discussed last time if someone wants to rent the center for a wedding, how that might go down. So I think it's a new area we're starting to get into, is like if there's a payment attached to renting the space, especially if yeah, I don't want to get too off agenda, but like we are thinking about that of which cases do we charge people?
Or, you know, again, just
Or
have
deposit.
have them, you know, have put a hold on a credit card.
Yeah, and I don't know if our current system, the all paid one that people buy compost or move and sale products from, has holds, but I'll ask them to look into it. Yeah. Or we can at least just take down the credit card number. But yeah, I'll figure that out how we can do that. The next one is just, again, this just reinforces the checkout one, which just makes it a rule that people need to clean up after themselves. Again, some of these things are common sense, but we want to be able to, you know, stand on something when we tell people what they have to do when they rent the space. And then this last one is the biggest change, I think, which is the reservation opening policy. And this just outlines the dates at which you're allowed to start renting the space for the next period of time. So December 1st for the winter, March 1st for the spring, just to create some order, because
that's a really good idea.
Yeah, and UCSB does that for their spaces as well. We do allow for high intensity, you know, big events who might have a bigger planning window. You know, we work with them, we meet to determine if that's a high intensity, so they get 6 months in advance of their event. And then weddings, which we're just putting in here now, but we don't have that fully built out yet, they get to reserve a year in advance. And we're looking to have those only during the summer. And also just memorializing first come, first serve. We get so many requests for the same time all the time, but the fairest thing we could think of is first come, first serve. But yeah, that's all the new policies that Maya and Jamie have been working on to have for us, and the policy committee so many times was at our meetings. And we work through all of these because it's one of our most used services, so we want to make sure these are all clean.
Strict chocolate.
So I noticed the thing about $100 for a minor cleaning and a $200 for a major. And as someone who has been involved with cleaning up some horrendous messes in my life made by third parties, it seems like it should be the actual cost of cleaning plus maybe an administrative fee. Because the cleaning can be like hazmat people and thousands of dollars. It can be horrible what people could do just to places. And hopefully it'll never happen, but $100 or $200 would be like nothing compared to what people can do.
That's true.
I think that's a good point. And with a number of parts of the policy, you know, you kind of mentioned, or I think in that part specifically, you say, you know, it's a severity-based approach. So, you know, depending on the severity of that, you don't necessarily have to charge the whole thing. But like, I remember this wasn't a community center, but all the styrofoam that got dumped in the parking lot.
That was a nightmare.
How much did we pay for that? Like a couple thousand?
A few hundred, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well,
Well,
yeah,
still,
it seems
but
like-
you know, it's also the headache, which is where the administrative fee comes in.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, we can take this one back to policy committee to work out a new a better language here, I could, I'll take it back to that's a good point. Like, we could adjust it to be.
You haven't seen some messes I've
Yeah.
like you.
And
Awesome.
it's more teeth to make sure we get more hopeful voluntary
I see.
compliance.
Yeah. You could say, something like, the cost of cleaning minimum $100, because we have to call the cleaning company, come out for a special order. But it's minimum 100, so, so we'll work something out. That's a good point.
All right, is there any other board questions this time? Director Brain.
It's actually not a question. I really like the reservation opening policy. I feel like it's also a good opportunity for us to like remind people cordially, like, hey, community center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes it fair because people in the know, oh, I'm going to reserve it for
Yeah.
March, but I'm
you
not
don't
in the
want-
know and I don't get it. So
Or
creates
it's locked up for the next decade.
right.
Is there any public commentary on this item? Right, there's no public commentary on this item, so I'll go back to the board. Is there any board commentary on this item? Seems like people are kind of interested in pausing on the one policy for cleanup and offense protocol and spending more time at policy committee on that. Is that what you were suggesting?
Yeah, you can approve this without that one if you want to make a motion for that.
What do my other directors think? Anyone on policy committee feel strongly about continuing to work on this particular part of the policy, or not continually working on this part of the policy?
I mean, I think we're still working on other community-facing policies too, so I think this is like an easy one to talk about.
Okay. Is there a motion on this item?
I'll move to adopt this policy. Is it without minus the last one, right?
Without, it's called reservation space cleanup offense protocol.
Or, you can just work on it and update it.
That's true too. Yeah.
At
least we'll have something
I think it's
in
good
place.
to start with, and then we'll get it a little more refined as we go.
Okay.
And that would be an area to refine, I think.
Okay.
If that's a motion, I would second that. Just adopt everything.
Yeah.
And direct policy to continue to tweak the cleanup.
We've been busy at policy committee.
I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any public comment on this motion? See no public comment on this motion, so I'll return to the board for a vote. All directors who are in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. And this motion passes 6-0-0-1. All right, that concludes our discussion and action items. We will now move on to our fifth section, reports. We'll begin with reports from members of the board. Do any members of the board have reports they would like to share? Yes, Director Topler.
I would like to mention that I was invited to be on a panel at UCSD to talk about Deltopia next Wednesday. And I told them that I didn't think I was the best person for it, but I would if they wanted me to, and then I never heard back at all. So I don't know if I'm not on it or I am on it, and I can follow up, but it seems like somebody from CSD should be on it, and I don't.
Do you know who's putting it on?
It was the vice president for
EVPLA?
extra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We're meeting with them tomorrow.
Yeah, we have
We'll
a
talk
meeting.
about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll share that earlier this month, I forgot to mention this at our last meeting, but I got our annual email for my personal Form 700. So I wanted to say out loud as just a reminder for everyone here that I like to remind folks because I have like 5 emails and it only goes to one of them. And it's not the one you'd expect. And so it can be kind of a scary thing to find. And then, yeah, it's good to be on good terms with our clerk, recorder, and assessor. And I'll also report that hopefully this Monday, the City of Goleta's Library Advisory Council will get to meet. We haven't met in a number of months, but I'm hoping that this coming Monday we'll have a meeting scheduled and I'll be able to share more information on that at our next meeting. And also I want to plug everyone to look for time in their calendars for us to have our annual retreat for our district. So we did hear a few topics that are ripe for district conversation on the future strategy. So those are my plugs. I'll move on to reports from standing and ad hoc committees. Do any committees wish to share reports? All right, I'll move on to report from district council.
Nothing to report, thank you.
All right, thank you. And I'll move on to report from our general manager and staff.
Okay. I also have a shorter report this time, but let's see. We had more community engagement done for bluff safety, and for the last storm, we promoted the list of houses that were under county monitoring. And I attended, and Director Deschler did as well, the community meeting that Supervisor Capps held last Friday about bluff safety. There were a lot of students and local press who attended, and it was really a good conversation from people and questions asked. The new fence is up at Sea Lookout Park. That's the last one on DP, and then Walter Capps is coming up next, and then the other parks are behind that. You heard a lot about the compost collective today. Ivy Beautiful. If you go to Pardal and Embarcadero Del Mar, the new flower kiosk is up now. It just got installed today. So we're excited to get that rolling. Ivy Safe, we had a good meeting last Friday. I failed to get the report out agenda item onto this. It just didn't, for some reason, click that it should have been today, the report out from Ivy Safe, but we'll do it on March 12th. We also had IVCN in the last 2 weeks as well that we helped organize, and we're taking on a bigger role in now, sending out the reminders, organizing the list for. I've spent probably the vast majority of my time in the last 2 weeks reviewing the mobility plan, existing conditions, and needs assessment that Dixon has produced. They're really good. I mean, I have notes, of course, but those are on their way to coming to the board now. But like I said, I've been working a lot on them, and they've worked pretty hard on the first drafts, and now they're incorporating my revisions. We also have had the parking study. We have our SBCC focus group tomorrow. We had to reschedule our session with the county planning office from today, but we're gonna have it soon. And we just started doing interviews on the beach to talk to people about beach access and how they got to the beach and their preferences on parking to go to the beach. So a lot of work continues for the parking study, but we're close to finishing up this last this outreach phase and data collection phase. The last data collection will be happening in 2 weeks. At that point, we'll have hit 1 year of data collection for the parking study, which is incredible. And you all, the parking committee did receive the draft reports already for the existing conditions and needs assessment. I did mention this last time, but I just want to drive the point home again. The whole board is free to look at those drafts that are on the public website for the parking committee and send me any revisions or comments you have on them so that I can communicate them to the Dixon team. We are asking to do it by the end of, by Friday or Monday of, by March 4th, essentially. We had a meeting with the county, and thanks to our board members who showed up for that, about the solar parking lot. It wasn't the most productive meeting, I'd say, and we didn't get a closed session on today since we had a lot else to discuss. On the solar parking lot, we had a lot more questions and back and forth with them on what's possible with the solar parking lot. They did at least approve the community garden to be out front here at the community center, so we will, we have some next steps there, but that is now moving forward. And trying to look at my notes one more time. I think that's pretty much it with my report, but happy to answer any questions on our operations. Thank you.
All right, I'll move on to our sixth item, our future meeting dates and future agenda items. If any directors would like to share any future agenda items they wish us to consider. All right, the next regular meeting of the Board of Directors will take place on March 12th, 2024 at 6 p.m. on Zoom and at the Community Room 970 Embarcadero Del Mar, Isla Vista, California. And this meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you all.
Good night, everyone.